so this is chapter 4, Early Societies in South Asia. And this chapter is pretty much all about India and kind of how India came to be the society that we know today. So today we're going to look at the start of this area in terms of the geography and the people that come in. And it starts with the Harappan society. Okay, so just in terms of purposes that you know where we're talking about in terms of Southeast Asia, over here, this is India. So we're kind of pretty much talking about this whole area right here, right? And get used to looking at a map like this because this is pretty much how all the maps on the AP World History test look like. So it starts with the Indus River, and the Indus River, kind of like the Nile, is not so predictable. Agriculture, however, is made possible because of this river. The Hindu Kush and the Himalayas, the snow caps that melt will the water will melt into the river, and then the river will obviously flow down through India and provide the water and soil that is needed for agricultural purposes. And because of this, they were able to produce wheat, barley, and cotton. Cotton was kind of a new textile, and they kind of had that exclusivity of it with cotton. And of course, you should know that the agricultural surplus is going to lead to population growth, and which means it's going to lead to cities and specialized labor. So here's a more in-depth area of the areas we're talking about, or an in-depth map of the areas we're talking about. So you can see the Indus River goes all the way across out into the Arabian Sea. We're going to look particularly at Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa up here, and Mohenjo-Daro as well, which is down here. So these are the two main city-states, the largest city-states that we know about today. And then, of course, the wheat and the cotton that were produced. So when we're looking at the Indus River Valley civilization, like I said, a lot of it is going to focus on Harappa because Harappa was probably where we got the most archaeological excavations and artifacts from. And it provides the most insight into the society that lived during this time frame. The first thing we look at is political organization. And actually, right now, we don't have any evidence of any sort of political system. We couldn't tell you if it was a democracy. We couldn't tell you it was a theocracy or anything like that. There's not enough evidence to prove that. But we do know that Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, these were economic and political centers for their regions. And we know that just based on, again, the artifacts that have been found. So again, here's the map of the areas we're looking at, and the areas we're focusing on. So what they did find in these areas was that there were city walls. So we know that it was fortified, meaning that it was protected. There was a fortified citadel, the main area that was going to be protected and protecting all the other lands. Some people think obviously they're protecting it from invaders. Another theory is that they were protecting it from the floods of the Indus River. So they're trying to keep the water out. In any case, the city wall suggests fortification. Another thing that they found was granary, and granary is pretty much what they used in order to pay taxes. The collection and redistribution of taxes in grain. So you would pay your taxes in grain, they'd store it in the granary, and that's pretty much how the people would live. Other things that they found in Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were marketplaces, temples, residential cities, streets. A big thing that was different than other areas and made it more sophisticated was this idea of standardization of weights, measures, brick size, architectural design throughout, which kind of suggests that these city states had major influence around not only in their areas but in their neighboring areas as well. We kind of think of it as silly to think that standardization was so important, but it showed a consistency throughout this area, which was pretty big in terms of influence. So this is just an idea of maybe how they think that the Harappans probably lived, the setup of the area. As you can see, standardization. Things all pretty much look the same. There's a standard there. There's nothing that's, overtly over the top in terms of architectural design. Of course, you're also going to have specialized labor because you have that food surplus. You don't need, again, everybody to work with farming. So you had people who were pottery makers, tool makers, created decorative items. These are some of the artifacts that were found in this area that suggests that there was pottery being done, weaponry being done. Some of the things that they would import were gold, silver, copper, lead, and gems. And usually they traded with the people around them. So they traded with the Persians, who we'll get to later. They traded with Mesopotamians and within their area in the Hindu Kush area. Okay, so your first question, what do you think standardization infers about Harappan society? All right, the next thing we're going to look at is Harappan society and culture itself. So again, because we don't know so much about this civilization, because there's actually not a lot of writing that has been translated, what we do know is all based off of artifacts and excavations. So we do know that there were no palaces or tombs. Um, so if there was a ruler, the ruler was probably living similar or maybe just a little bit more extravagant of a lifestyle than the poor. Rulers probably also ruled from the citadel, from that main area of protection. However, we do know that there was a distinction between the rich and the poor. They had vastly different lifestyles. If you were rich, or I'm sorry, if you were poor, you probably lived in a one-bedroom tenement where it was you and several people. However, if you were wealthy, you probably lived in a 2 to 3 story house, had several rooms. You had a well to get your own water. You had brick ovens, private bathrooms, showers, that kind of thing. So, very, very elaborate and very sophisticated. One of the main things that you need to take away from this chapter in terms of technological advances was that the Indus River Valley civilization, such as Harappa, they came up with a drainage system or a sewer system. They were the first ones to ever come up with that kind of technological development. And that's huge because we're talking about, people living BCE times before the Common Era, and they were already developing this technology. And you won't see it again till after the Middle Ages, till after about maybe like 1400 CE. So this advancement was really, really important. And then here's some artifacts of the kind of jewelry that they would make, probably what they would wear if they were rich. And of course, you have representational art and the gold and copper. The next thing we're going to look at is the fertility cults. So, kind of, you want to think of it as something that was still similar to like the Neolithic, Paleolithic age, where these civilizations are still believing in fertility and they still recognize the importance of fertility. And a lot of it was seen through the various artifacts that you see here, where you're venerating women, you're showing honor to them. Not only that, they also saw the importance of animals and trees that were also sacred to this idea of regeneration and growth and fertility. So that was also important to them as well. And you'll see this idea of fertility cults also transfer into Hinduism, into the Hindu deities later on. So fertility is still very important with the Indus River Valley civilizations. So in terms of decline, no one is really sure why they declined. There's a lot of theories, and probably the most common one is that it was ecological degradation, meaning that they pretty much abused their land. They depleted all the resources of the land, the deforestation for cultivation and firewood. And this is probably the most common theory. There are also theories that you read in the book about earthquakes that also happened, or flooding. Those are possibilities too, but probably the most common is the idea of degradation. Okay, so here are your next questions. 2, why do you think Harappan society was able to have such technological advances like the brick ovens, the sewer systems? And 3, why do you think Harappans maintained a closeness with the idea of fertility cults? All right, so that's pretty much the first section. Next time we meet, we'll look at the Indo-Europeans, or more specifically, the Aryans that come into India and pretty much will influence the Indian area there. So we'll see you guys next time.